Welcome back to the Quick Hitters podcast. This is episode number 2. I appreciate all the love and support you guys showed on episode 1, on the social accounts, on the YouTube video, and yeah, I really appreciate all of you that watched and all of you that are coming back now for episode 2. Just a little upload schedule type announcement here. Going to be uploading this episode number 2, and then we'll be back in around 2 weeks with episode number 3. There may be a couple additional social posts in between when this episode comes out and when episode 3 comes out. But yeah, still trying to stick to that every week or every other week. I'm going to be on vacation, so that explains the 2-week hiatus. But yeah, appreciate the support, like I said, and follow at the Quick Hitters Pod on all platforms for clips of the episodes and announcements and all that type of jazz. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into topic number 1, which is revolving around the NFL season. And the question that I've been wondering is, have we as a society gotten to a point where we're underrating Patrick Mahomes? I know that might sound crazy because, a lot of people consider him to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time, easily of, this era at post-Brady. It's been, kind of dominated by Mahomes. He has 3 Super Bowl rings, a bunch of MVP awards, a bunch of honors, has led the league in multiple categories consistently year in and year out. But with NFL season rapidly approaching, something that, a lot of networks and sports podcasts and the media will do is they'll create lists and rankings of certain positions or teams and whatnot as they're gearing up for the football season. And something that I've seen that I think is absolutely ridiculous is that there are lists of top quarterbacks in the NFL, and Mahomes is left outside of the top 3. Any top quarterback list that has Patrick Mahomes outside of the top 3 is absolutely insane. And I get the argument, I guess. He's coming off of a year where he hit his career low in passing yards with, just over 3,900. Lowest passing touchdown since 2019 with 26. He didn't perform well in the Chiefs' Super Bowl loss, but with all that being said, he's still an unbelievable quarterback that is without a doubt top 3, arguably the best quarterback in the NFL. He still makes throws that no other player on the planet could make. And while his performance in the Super Bowl wasn't great, he led the Chiefs to 15 wins in the regular season, and they still made it to the Super Bowl. I get the sentiment that, they got whooped. The Eagles took care of business, don't get me wrong, but that defense was spectacular. And it wasn't a great game for Mahomes, but, I 100% think that he's being criminally underrated as of right now. Going into this season, he's got the weapons that he hasn't always really had in the past couple of years post Tyreek Hill. Xavier Worthy, his kind of arrival onto the scene during the Super Bowl is something to totally look out for this season. As only a rookie, he had 8 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, which is the highest number of receiving yards by a rookie receiver ever in a Super Bowl. He was obviously one of the few bright spots for the Chiefs and their fans during the game, because other than that, wasn't too great. So Mahomes has a new, up-and-coming speedster wide receiver that he'll be able to throw to this season. Obviously, in the past couple of years, his go-to option, his security blanket, his number one guy has been Travis Kelce, who, albeit is aging, but he can still be a great possession receiver in this upcoming 2025-26 NFL season. Despite not being what he once was, he's still a big target. Andy Reid has been praising his effort and his availability during training camp so far, that even at his age, he's still completing all the drills and, trying just as hard as anybody. And obviously that's something you want to see out of your veteran leader, and something you want to see out of your star tight end. You have Noah Gray right behind him, who's kind of an up-and-comer for the Chiefs. Like, he's going to be the person to be their tight end of the future, really, and still contribute this year. And something that could ultimately end up helping Patrick Mahomes a lot. There's two big what-ifs at the wide receiver position for the Kansas City Chiefs. And those are, Hollywood Brown actually being able to stay healthy, which is something he really struggled with last season. Obviously missed a ton of time, was able to, come back for the playoffs, but wasn't super effective. Like, you could tell that he wasn't 100% healthy. I want to say he only had a handful of catches for, maybe around 100 yards total throughout the playoffs. But if he's able to come back at full strength this season, we've seen what he's capable of. When he's fully healthy, he can be a great option. He's caught passes from Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson, and he was a very anticipated and very hyped up signing for the Chiefs, and he was supposed to be a great weapon for Mahomes. So we'll see what could happen this season if he's able to stay healthy. And the second big what if is Rashee Rice, who had a fantastic start to the year last year before ultimately getting really injured, and he lost a lot of time during last season. There was a lot of hype around him as well going into this year that, he was going to come back fully healthy and be there with Mahomes all year long, alongside Hollywood Brown. But he recently just got in trouble for reckless driving. He was speeding in like a sports car, caused a multi-car collision, big crash. So people are speculating that he's going to be suspended from anywhere from 5 to 7 games, I believe I saw. So that's a bit of a hamper on Mahomes' production in 2025-26. But once he comes back, that's going to be another good weapon to add to things. I've been seeing reports that the Chiefs' offensive line, despite going out there and trading Joe Thuney, they've been able to kind of revamp what a unit that looked awful during the Super Bowl. That that was their biggest weakness that you could see, is that the Eagles' pass rush was just passing through them like it was nothing. But early reports out of training camp are saying that their offensive line is seeing some major improvements, and they might actually be one of their more deeper position groups where they might have guys that are healthy and are on the bench waiting to get an opportunity that are still solid contributing offensive linemen. So that's another thing that contributes to that may contribute to Mahomes' success in this upcoming year. Right now on all major sports books, the Chiefs are plus 800 to win the Super Bowl, and Mahomes is plus 650 to win the MVP. So, middling odds really. He's below guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. I think even Jaden Daniels might be ahead of him. And to me, that just seems like everybody's counting out a guy that through his first few seasons in the league, everybody considered that he was going to be the next GOAT, that he eventually might have a shot to be better than Tom Brady. And I feel like people are, paying a lot of attention to that Super Bowl game, which, Mahomes has had bad appearances in the Super Bowl before. Back when the Chiefs were matched up against the Buccaneers in Tom Brady's last Super Bowl, that was a really rough showing from Mahomes, and it was another game where the offensive line was seriously hampering their chances of, getting anything done on offense, and it was very reminiscent, of that Eagles game. So we know that Mahomes is capable of bouncing back from bad performances in the playoffs. He has 3 Super Bowl rings. He's a playoff performer, and he had a bad game. Don't get me wrong. It was rough. But I'm honestly all in on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this season. I think they're going to be a lot more physical than they were in seasons past. They're going to be able to, actually spread the wealth offensively. They're going to have more weapons than maybe they've been used to in the past couple years, as long as those two big ifs come true. And, Rice, once he comes back from serving his suspension, and I really do think that Patrick Mahomes is going to come back this year with a vengeance. I think he's going to come back and show everybody why he is, considered to be one of the best quarterbacks ever. He's going to reassert himself as maybe the best quarterback in the league right now. He's going to catapult back over Josh Allen and Lamar. And I really do think that the Chiefs are a very, very compelling pick for the 2025 Super Bowl. I think I'm going to end up making my official pick once we get closer to kickoff of the NFL regular season, but the Chiefs are, it sounds obvious given their history and the fact that they were in the Super Bowl last year, but I think a lot of people have been counting them out, and I think they're a very, very serious contender. Might even be my pick. We'll see. All right, that brings us to topic number 2, a debate that I've been mulling over in my head, and something that I've been thinking about are, what are some of the worst front offices in all of the major sports leagues in the U.S.? And what got me thinking about this is that I honestly believe that my Chicago Bulls, my hometown team, I honestly believe that the Chicago Bulls are the worst front office in all of sports. What sparked this is that recently the Bulls gave Billy Donovan, their head coach, a multi-year extension, which over the summer, it was rumored that the Knicks reached out to the Bulls and were requesting to interview Billy Donovan for their head coaching vacancy. And when the reports had gone live that the Bulls denied this, Bulls fans were very upset. And not only did the Bulls deny that request, they ended up doubling down and gave him an extension. In Billy Donovan's 5 seasons with the Bulls, his record is 196 wins to 209 losses. Not good. He has 1 playoff win with only 5 appearances, if you don't count, the play-in. Which, do you think that 1 playoff win in 5 seasons is something that would grant you, extension after extension? Because I certainly don't. But Billy Donovan is the perfect coach for this Bulls front office regime because all they want to do is be a very middling team. They're the definition of a team that is not trying to compete whatsoever. Their ideal scenario is that, they sell out the United Center and they get a ton of people to come to their games, even though they're not spending a lot of money in free agency. They're never going into, the higher aprons or paying a luxury tax or anything like that. And they remain a middle-of-the-pack team that's, right around that play-in spot where they can get the fans excited right at the end of the season where, the Bulls are making noise. They might end up going on a run here in the playoffs, but they end up losing to the Heat or the Hawks or the Raptors in the play-in game. And all the hype was for nothing. The Bulls are a team that are forever trapped in mediocrity, which in pro sports is the worst place to be. I would much rather the Bulls were bottom of the barrel and competing for number 1 picks and trying to put their hats in the lottery and get guys like Cooper Flagg or AJ DeBotzna, but they're not. They're going to sit here middle of the pack. They're going to be forced to overpay Josh Giddey, who is, a perfect guy if you want to be competing for play-in games, but I think he's a good player, of course, but he's not a guy that, you're going to pay $30 million a year to, and he's going to be your number 1 option that'll go and make you a title contender. But this is where they are. This is where they're trapped, thanks to their GM, Arturas Karnisovas, and big time thanks to their owner, probably the worst owner in professional sports, Jerry Reinsdorf, who has a chokehold on the Bulls, has had a chokehold on the White Sox, who past couple of years have been god-awful as well. He recently, this summer, announced that he's going to be selling the White Sox, but going to hold on to the Bulls in the Reinsdorf family, which, means they're just going to be stuck in this horrible position that they're in. And all these thoughts that I was having about how genuinely the Bulls might be the worst run organization in all of sports. It, had me thinking about what other teams are competing for that title. And if you stay local in the NBA, like teams like the Kings, for example, come to mind. I mean, they're incredibly similar to the point where they're just going to be that middle of the pack mediocre group, for years on end. I mean, they literally tried to copy the Bulls word for word, bar for bar. Like they teamed up Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, and it's something that the Bulls tried, and it was successful for maybe half a season. And then after that, they're sitting right around that 8, 9, 10 seed in the East conversation. I mean, it's even worse for the Kings because they're in the West. But, that's a team that comes to mind. I guess other teams that you could toss out there are maybe like the Brooklyn Nets, or maybe like the Pelicans made noise during during the NBA draft for that like god-awful unprotected trade that they made to go and get Derek Queen, but they sent their unprotected first next year, which got a lot of flack in NBA circles. But switching gears to like the NFL, for example, I think like a team like, what the hell is going on with them? The Bengals. I think the Cincinnati Bengals might be one of the Cincinnati Bengals are putting their hat in the ring for one of the worst front offices in sports. Mainly because like their allocation of spending is that they committed a vast majority of their salary cap of what they're going to spend on all their players on just 3 guys in Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and 3 offensive guys, all playmakers, like your quarterback and your number 1 guy and Burrow and Chase. Like I get it, but with the T. Higgins extension, it's kind of left them pretty strapped for cash, and it sparked like some really terrible like contract holdouts and altercations between players on the defensive side of the ball with, Trey Hendrickson, who has been holding out for a long time with the Bengals, searching for a new contract. He led the league in sacks last year. Like he's certainly deserving of more money, but the Bengals front office just won't like give it to him, mainly because they kind of put themselves in a terrible position. Same thing. They're having disputes with their first round pick, Shamar Turner, I believe his name is. He wouldn't sign his deal because the Bengals were refusing to give him some sort of clause to where if he gets hurt, he would keep, his guaranteed money, which is very standard for NFL players in general, but especially first round picks. He was another defensive guy. They were holding out on him. So really, I mean, in an offseason where fans might have been, ready to get excited about keeping T. Higgins and, keeping that trio of their passing game together, instead they had to focus on the front office, messing things up on the defensive side of the ball by going into these massive holdouts and, long battles with both of their supposed, going to be star pass rushers. So we'll see how that ends up working out for them. Also in the NFL, I think the New York Giants are another team whose front office is, widely recognized as being one of the worst in sports as well. The number one thing that comes to mind is, they took too long to kind of move on from Daniel Jones. It seemed like to the average NFL fan, to other teams, to, media personalities, that it was kind of time for the Giants to, give up on Daniel Jones and try and go in another direction for, their future franchise quarterback. But, they took too long. They committed to him for most of last season as well, which, could have hampered the development of, a guy they just drafted in Malik Neighbors, a wide receiver that they're hoping is going to be a big-time part of their future, but he had Daniel Jones still throwing to him. They eventually realized that the experiment wasn't working. They cut ties, but it took too long. What else have they done? They let a generational running back, Saquon Barkley, one of the best players in the entire NFL, they let him walk to a divisional rival for a price that was not outside of the range, and he ended up winning a Super Bowl in his first season with the Eagles. Like, that is just a tough pill to swallow. Especially, he's going to go to a team that's your division, like, bitter rival. And the final thing, like, everybody looks at the Cleveland Browns for, what are they doing with their quarterback room? Like, it makes no sense, so weird, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, the Giants are in a very, very similar spot as well. They have Tommy DeVito on the roster still, who, made some noise last year, was kind of an internet sensation as he came in after, Danny Dimes was done over there. This past offseason, they signed Jameis Winston, who was a free agent, which I thought was cool. Like, I like Jameis. He's fun. He's fun to root for, like a good, like, stopgap kind of guy who could, provide some veteran leadership if they were maybe going to eventually draft a quarterback, which I think most people expected. But then right after that, they also signed Russell Wilson, who essentially, like, kind of serves a similar purpose to bring in Jameis in the first place. Like, neither of them are going to be your quarterbacks of the future in today's day and age. Like, they're going to be stopgap guys or guys that can mentor a young quarterback, and they brought on both of them, which was weird. And then they ended up trading up into the first round in the NFL draft to take Jackson Dart, who all signs point, obviously, to him being their, like, future franchise guy that they're gonna look at and shine on. But it's really just a confusing room altogether, because now they've got four guys, just like the Browns do, competing for the same job. So I honestly think they don't get enough hate for that in general. So I think those are all teams that fit that worst front office conversation. In the baseball world, kind of seems like, the Colorado Rockies are just doomed right now. I mean, their team has been god-awful this year. And I don't know too much on the situation, but I know that their owners, Charles and Richard Manfort, get a ton of hate in, like, Rockies circles and, like, MLB fandom. So I think they're another team that I can just throw in there. But yeah, that's a lot of, thinking about the Bulls just made me real upset, and I had to just kind of focus my attention elsewhere where, other teams are just as doomed as well with bad front offices. So, yeah. Okay, and that moves us on to our third topic of today, which is in the NBA realm, a team that's been getting widely known as the Unction, the LA Clippers, because they've been making noise this offseason. They recently signed Chris Paul. They brought him back to LA on a 1-year vet minimum deal, which is a signing that got a lot of hype, and I personally loved it. I was a huge fan of those Lob City teams, and it made me really happy to see, like, this reunion of sorts. I thought that was cool. But they also brought in Brook Lopez on, I think, either a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, and ended up also signing Bradley Beal to a 2-year, $11 million deal, which I don't hate these signings, but, the Clippers are essentially just going to be a team built of old guys, which is kind of why they get the name the Unction. Yeah, I mean, if you look at their roster, CP3 is going to be 40 years old. Brook Lopez is going to be 37. James Harden's going to be 36. Nicholas Batum is going to be 36. Kawhi is going to be 34. Beal is 32. So this is a team that is really, really old. Like, going to be in the running for, on average, being one of the oldest teams in NBA history. And I think that the Clippers, like, started to build something that was pretty interesting and, competitive last season. You had the resurgence of James Harden, who, was kind of back to not quite peak form, but he looked great last season. He was an all-star. he was pretty efficient scoring the ball. He was a great point guard, like tossing out tons of assists for the Clippers as well. Zubats had a career year. Looks like he's really blossoming into, a great young center for them. I want to say he averaged around 16, 17, 18, 19 points, 12 rebounds. He was all defensive, second team. So those are two good building blocks. Plus, obviously, you still have Kawhi Leonard, who, when healthy and when he's playing, when he's on the floor, is one of the most efficient scorers in the league, is a superstar. So the Clippers were really building something last year. And also this offseason, they went out and they traded for John Collins to be, that, everyday true power forward that they were kind of missing last season. And I thought that was a great move. In that trade, they gave up Norman Powell, who is a good, solid role player, like a good guard. But, it helped them in more ways than one. Obviously, they got Collins, who is going to be good for them. He can attack the rim, is a solid defender. But really getting rid of Norman Powell, it opens the door for them to go out and sign Bradley Beal once he got bought out. And the Beal signing was interesting. I think 2 years, $11 million is a good price for sure. I think Beal is still a good player at the end of the day. And really, with the Clippers being as old of a team as they're going to be, with all these old guys, the ages that I mentioned, 40, 37, 36, 36, 34, 32, and Kawhi being as injury prone as he is, I just don't know how many games that all these guys are really going to be able to play together. I think they're a team that is going to be good in the regular season. Don't get me wrong; they'll probably win close to 50 games and maybe even be a top 4 seed in the West. But with the age of all these guys like Harden and CP3 and Kawhi and Brook Lopez, with the age that they bring and the injury concerns for a lot of the guys on this team, I don't possibly see how the Clippers aren't going to run out of gas once it comes playoff time. And I'm not saying that's what I hope is going to happen. This is a team that I'll probably be rooting for. I've always rooted for Chris Paul. I'm a fan of James Harden. I like Kawhi. Like I said, I think the Beal addition was great at a good price. He'll be a solid scorer. John Collins, going out and getting him was good. Good move. Zubats is good. Harden is good. They're going to be a solid team, but I just don't think with this roster construction that, they're really going to be able to make noise in the playoffs, just because that age is going to be something that gets them down. The Thunder, the team that just won the title a month ago, is the youngest team ever to win an NBA title. And that's kind of an indication of where this league is going. And it just seems like the Clippers are, throwing all that into the wind and trying the exact opposite, which I commend them for. They're a good organization who consistently, produces winning teams year in and year out. So we'll have to see what it ends up coming down to, but I really don't buy into the hype that they're going to be a serious title contender. And today, instead of our usual, unsung hero segment of the show, for our final topic, we're going to be remembering Ryan Sandberg. As a Cubs fan, this is a very big topic. Just wanted to offer a rest in peace to Sandberg, who was a longtime Cubs second baseman, MLB player who recently, a couple days ago, lost his battle with cancer. Sadly passed away at age 65. So just kind of remembering him. He was huge in the late 80s and early 90s, a big household name for the Cubs and the entire MLB alike. He was a pillar of consistency for the Cubs during that time. He made 10 straight All-Star teams. He won 9 straight Gold Gloves at that second base position. For me, I'm only 20 years old. I didn't see him play at all, but it's always been like a legendary name to hear as a Cubs fan. But for the generation like above me, I know like my dad, he was his favorite player of all time. Sandberg inspired the entire city of Chicago while he was playing for the Cubs and was beloved by all the fans and, baseball fans throughout the country. I know that a lot of baseball fans were hit pretty hard by this loss. Obviously, it's super sad. Just like reading up on all the stories and information about his career and who he was as a person, like baseball-wise, the number one thing that stood out was there was the Sandberg game in the 1984 playoffs where for the Cubs, he ended up hitting 2 game-tying home runs in the 9th and 10th innings of a playoff game against the Cardinals, who are the Cubs' like bitter rival, like number one most hated team. The pitcher was Hall of Famer closer Bruce Sutter, and the Cubs obviously went on to win that game, and like that ended up being like a marking of a legendary career for Sandberg, who also is a Hall of Famer. That like game ended up, there's a statue outside of Wrigley Field that commemorates that game. Really, like he's just a guy that he, meant a lot to the city. That he was one of the original like 5-tool guys that really could do it all on the baseball field. He could hit for power. He played a great second base. He hit for contact. He was fast. He stole a lot of bases. One of the best Cubs of all time. Every story, like I said, that I've been reading or hearing about makes it seem like he was a great dude, like just a great person, and a great representation of the city of Chicago. Just like I said, instead of our usual unsung heroes ending to the show, just wanted to give a little bit of a memoriam to Ryne Sandberg. So rest in peace to him, one of the greatest Cubs ever. Yeah. So with that will wrap up episode number 2 of the Quick Hitters podcast. Once again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's been a ton of fun, like reading through the comments and seeing all the support on the social pages, on the YouTube. So thank you guys for that. Appreciate you tuning into this episode. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.